Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Waska Urwa, and today we're diving into a world I know a little something about: rare coins. Specifically, we're talking about the humble penny. You might have a jar full of them at home, but I guarantee you don't have these. We're going on a journey through the complete history of America's most valuable and sought-after pennies. From the very first coin struck by the US Mint to modern-day errors that are worth a fortune, we're going to cover it all. You never know what's going to come through that door, and in the world of coin collecting, you never know what you'll find in your pocket. I've seen a lot of coins in my time, some real, some fake, some worth millions. What makes a coin truly special isn't just its age or its metal content, it's the story. And believe me, these pennies have some of the best stories you'll ever hear. We're going to look at why they were made, the controversies they caused, the mistakes that made them famous, and why collectors are willing to pay hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, of dollars for just 1 cent. It's a fascinating slice of American history, told through these tiny pieces of copper, so get ready for a deep dive. We'll explore everything from the controversial designs of the 1790s that people thought were just plain ugly, to the wartime accidents that created legendary rarities. I'm going to show you what to look for, explain the history, and give you the inside scoop on what makes these coins the holy grails of numismatics. You're going to learn a lot. Stick with me because this is the story of the top 10 rare pennies that are worth a whole lot more than 1 cent. Let's start at the very beginning. The year is 1793. The United States is a brand new country, and it needs its own money, so the US Mint gets to work and produces its very first official coin, the 1 cent piece. This wasn't just any penny, it was the chain cent. On the front you had a depiction of Lady Liberty, but let's just say she wasn't a big hit. Her hair was wild and unkempt, and people said she looked frightened. It wasn't the powerful, confident symbol the young nation was hoping for. It's a classic case of a great idea with a not-so-great execution, something I see all the time. But the real controversy was on the back. To symbolize the unity of the 13 original states, the designer, Henry Voigt, put a chain with 13 interlocking links. The public took one look at it and hated it. A chain to them wasn't a symbol of unity, it was a symbol of slavery, of bondage to the British crown they had just fought to escape. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Newspapers criticized the design, calling it an emblem of slavery. The government had a PR nightmare on its hands with its very first coin. Because of this public outcry, the Mint stopped production of the chain cent after only about 5 weeks. They only managed to strike around 36,000 of them before they switched to a new design. Now, you have to remember, in 1793, 36,000 was a decent number, but survival rates for these early coins are incredibly low. They were used, they were beat up, they were melted down. People didn't think about collecting them, they were just money. It was a tool, and like any tool, it got worn out. As a result, very few of these chain cents have survived to this day, especially in good condition. Experts estimate that only about 1,000 to 1,500 still exist in any shape or form. Finding one that isn't heavily worn or damaged is the real challenge. You're looking at a piece of history that was immediately rejected by the public, making it a true snapshot of the anxieties and attitudes of early America. A piece of history like that, you can't put a price on it. Well, actually you can, and it's a big one. When one of these comes up for auction, collectors go crazy. A high-grade 1793 chain cent can sell for over $1 million. I've seen them go for staggering amounts. It's the first of the first, a coin born from controversy and scarcity. It represents the shaky, uncertain first steps of the United States, and for that reason, it will always be one of the most sought-after coins in American history. It's the kind of thing you dream of finding in an old collection, a true treasure. So, the Mint has a problem. The public hates their first penny. What do? You go back to the drawing board, quick, and that's exactly what they did. Later in 1793, they replaced the chain cent with the wreath cent. This was the government's attempt to listen to the people and fix their mistake. They needed a design that projected strength and prosperity, not fear and slavery. It's a classic business move. The customer is always right, even when it comes to the design of the nation's currency. The changes were significant. On the front, Lady Liberty got a makeover. Her hair was redesigned to look more orderly and refined, and her expression was softened. She looked less frightened and more classically beautiful. But the biggest change was on the back. The offending chain was gone, completely removed. In its place was a beautiful, elegant wreath of laurel leaves. This was a much more traditional and acceptable symbol of victory and honor. It was a safe bet, and it paid off. The public's complaints died down. The wreath scent had a much longer production run than its predecessor, staying in production for most of 1793. The mint struck about 63,000 of them, almost double the number of chain cents. However, just like the chain cent, these coins were heavily used in everyday commerce. They were large, heavy pieces of copper, and they passed through thousands of hands. Finding one today that isn't heavily worn, corroded, or damaged is a real trick. These coins are over 200 years old, and they show it. There are a few different varieties of the wreath scent that collectors look for, like the strawberry leaf variety, which is incredibly rare. For some reason, a few coins were struck with a different style of leaf in the wreath that looks like a strawberry plant. Only 4 of those are known to exist, making them legendary among specialists. It's one of those little details, a tiny change on the die, that can turn a valuable coin into a priceless one. You gotta know what you're looking for. While not as expensive as the top condition chain cents, a nice wreath scent is still a very valuable coin. Depending on the condition and variety, they can fetch anywhere from a few $1,000s to well over $500,000 at auction. It represents the mint's first successful course correction, a moment where they learned to listen to the public. It's a beautiful piece of early American artistry and a cornerstone of any serious collection of U.S. coins. It tells a story of adaptation and refinement. For over 60 years, the U.S. penny was a huge piece of copper, almost the size of a modern half-dollar. They were heavy, cumbersome, and by the 1850s, the cost of copper meant they were worth more melted down than their face value. The government was losing money on every penny it made. They needed a change. So the mint began experimenting with a new, smaller penny. This led to one of the most famous and desirable patterns in U.S. history, the 1856 Flying Eagle cent. It was a radical departure from everything that came before. The design itself was a big change. Instead of the traditional bust of Lady Liberty, the new cent featured a majestic flying eagle on the front, based on a design used on silver dollars 2 decades earlier. The reverse had a simple agricultural wreath. More importantly, the coin was made of a new metal composition, 88% copper and 12% nickel, which gave it a distinctive light color, earning it the nickname white cent. It was smaller, lighter, and cheaper to produce. It was the future of the penny. Here's the thing that makes the 1856 so special. It was never meant for circulation. It was a pattern coin, a prototype. The mint struck a limited number of them. Estimates range from about 1,500 to maybe 3,000, to show to congressmen and other influential people to get their approval for the new small cent. It was a sales pitch in coin form. The mint director, James Ross Snowden, used them to lobby for the change in coinage laws. He handed them out to politicians and kept some for prominent collectors, knowing that would build buzz. Of course, once word got out that a new penny was coming, everyone wanted one. The 1856 became an instant collectible. Mint employees, seeing the demand, secretly struck more of them to sell or trade on the side. This is why it's technically considered a pattern, but it's collected as if it were a regular issue. It's the first year of the small cent, even though the coin wasn't officially released to the public until 1857. It's a coin with a murky, insider backstory which always makes things more interesting. Today, the 1856 Flying Eagle cent is a classic American rarity. Because they were never intended for the public, most were saved and are found in relatively good condition. But the demand is off the charts. Every collector of U.S. cents wants one as the first of its kind. A decent-looking example will run you thousands of dollars, while a top-grade, pristine coin can fetch over $100,000. It's the coin that changed the American penny forever, a beautiful experiment that became a legend. After the short-lived Flying Eagle cent, the mint introduced the Indian head penny in 1859. This became one of America's most iconic coins, minted for 50 years. For most of those years they made millions of them, but there's one year that stands out. One year that every collector dreads trying to find and dreams of owning, 1877. The 1877 Indian head cent is the undisputed king, the key date of the entire series. When I get an Indian head collection in the shop, the first thing I do is check for this date. So what makes it so rare? It's a perfect storm of historical circumstances. The country was in the middle of a severe economic depression, known as the Long Depression, which followed the Panic of 1873. Money was tight, and commerce slowed down. As a result, there was very little demand for new coinage. The mint had a huge surplus of cents from previous years sitting in its vaults. There was simply no need to make a bunch of new ones. Because of this, the Philadelphia Mint only struck 852,500 pennies in 1877. Now that might sound like a lot, but compare that to a few years earlier when they were minting over 30 million a year. It was a tiny fraction of the normal output. On top of that, this was also the year of the Great Railroad Strike. The country was in turmoil. People weren't saving coins, they were spending every penny they had just to get by. So, the few 1877 cents that did make it into circulation were used heavily. This combination of low mintage and high circulation means that very few 1877 cents survived in decent condition. Most were worn down until the date was barely readable. For decades, collectors searched for them in vain. Finding an 1877 in your change became the stuff of legend. It was the coin that got kids into the hobby, the ultimate treasure hunt. Even today, a heavily worn, barely identifiable 1877 cent is worth a few $100s. If you're lucky enough to find one in a high grade, you're talking serious money. A mint state, uncirculated 1877 Indian head cent can be worth over $100,000. It's a coin that's famous, simply for being hard to find. There's no special error or design change, just pure scarcity. It's a testament to how economic conditions can impact coin collecting decades later. It's the gatekeeper of the Indian Head series, and a true American classic. In 1909, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, the U.S. Mint decided to do something revolutionary, put a real person on a circulating coin. This was the birth of the Lincoln cent, the penny we still use today. The design, created by a brilliant sculptor named Victor David Brenner, was an instant success. The portrait of Lincoln was praised for its realism and dignity. On the reverse, he designed 2 ears of wheat, a simple and powerful symbol of American prosperity. But he also added one small detail that would cause a national uproar. On the bottom of the reverse, tucked beneath the wheat stalks, Brenner placed his full initials, VDB. He was proud of his work, and it was common for artists to sign their creations. However, some people, including high-ranking officials at the Mint, felt the initials were too prominent. They saw it as advertising, a flagrant display of ego on a national coin. A public controversy, fanned by the press, quickly erupted. The Treasury Secretary ordered the initials to be removed. The order to remove the initials came down just a few weeks after production had started. The main mint in Philadelphia had already produced over 27 million of these VDB cents, but the branch mints in San Francisco and Denver had much smaller runs. The Denver Mint didn't produce any VDBs, but the San Francisco Mint, marked with a small S under the date, struck only 484,000 of them before the order came to halt production and remove the initials. That small mintage number, just 484,000, is the key. When the public learned that the VDB initials were being removed, these coins became an instant sensation. People started hoarding them, pulling them from circulation, but there were so few of the San Francisco SVDB cents to begin with that they immediately became scarce. A coin that was just a few weeks old was already a collector's item. It's one of the most famous stories in coin collecting. Today, the 1909 VDB is arguably the most famous rare coin in the entire Lincoln cent series. It's the coin that many people start their collection with, or at least dream of owning. A worn one will still cost you a good chunk of change, maybe $500 to $1,000, but a pristine, uncirculated example, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars. It's a perfect example of how a little bit of controversy, a talented artist, and a small mintage can create a numismatic legend. After the VDB controversy in 1909, the Lincoln cent settled into its role as America's workhorse coin. For a few years, the mints in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco churned out tens of millions of them annually, but then came 1914. While the Philadelphia and San Francisco mints had relatively normal production, something different happened in Denver. The Denver Mint, marked with a D mint mark below the date, produced a surprisingly small number of pennies that year. The montage for the 1914 D Lincoln cent was just 1,193,000. At the time, nobody thought much of it. That was still over 1 million coins, and it wasn't an astonishingly low number compared to some earlier issues. The coins went into circulation and were used for everyday transactions, just like any other penny. There was no controversy, no error, no special story attached to them at the time. They were just pennies. And that's exactly why they became so rare. Unlike the 1909 SVDB, which was hoarded from the start, nobody was saving the 1914 D. They were spent, lost, and worn out over decades of use. It wasn't until the coin collecting hobby started to boom in the 1930s and 40s, with the advent of coin albums with a hole for every date and mint mark, that people realized something. When they got to the spot for the 1914 D, they couldn't find one. The coin had simply disappeared from circulation. The 1914 D's rarity is a natural one. It comes from a combination of a lower-than-average montage and decades of attrition. Most of the coins were worn to a frazzle before anyone thought to save them. Finding a 1914 D with sharp details, what collectors call a strong strike, is incredibly difficult. The dies used at the Denver Mint that year were often worn, resulting in coins with weak details, especially on Lincoln's beard and the motto, "In God We Trust." Because of this, the 1914 D is considered one of the big three key-date Lincoln cents, along with the 1909 SVDB and the 1931 S. Even in a very worn condition, a 1914 D is a valuable coin, worth a couple of $100s. But if you find one in uncirculated, mint state condition, you're holding a major rarity. These can sell for tens of thousands of dollars, and top-grade examples have exceeded $100,000 at auction. It's a sleeper coin that became a giant. Here's a story that's all about a mistake, a very, very valuable mistake. In 1922, the US economy was recovering, but the demand for new pennies was still low. In fact, the Philadelphia Mint didn't produce any cents at all that year. Only the Denver Mint struck pennies in 1922. That means that every single legitimate 1922 cent should have a D mint mark below the date. So if you find a 1922 penny with no mint mark, you've either got a fake, or you've got something really special. So how does a coin that was only made in Denver end up without its D mint mark? It comes down to a problem with the dies. A die is the stamp used to strike the design onto a blank coin. The obverse die, the one for the head side, had the date on it. The mint mark was punched onto this die by hand at the mint. In 1922, the Denver Mint had a lot of trouble with their dies. They were wearing out and breaking. To keep production going, mint workers would heavily polish and resurface the dies to get more life out of them. During one of these heavy polishing sessions, a mint employee got a little too aggressive. They polished the die so much that they completely removed the D mint mark. The area where the D should be was ground down, leaving a blank space. This worn-out mint markless die was then put into a press and used to strike thousands of pennies. The result was a batch of 1922 cents that looked like they were made in Philadelphia because they had no mint mark. But we know Philadelphia didn't make any that year. This created a fantastic and valuable error coin. Collectors call it the 1922 no D or plain cent. But you have to be careful. There are different versions of this error. The most valuable ones are from a die that was so worn that not only is the D missing, but the motto "In God We Trust" and other details on the front are extremely weak. This is known as the weak reverse variety, and it's the true prize. A less worn die created a strong reverse variety, which is also valuable, but not as much. Because of its value, this is one of the most counterfeited coins out there. People will take a regular 1922 D and try to remove the D mint mark. An expert can spot this pretty easily by looking for tool marks or an unnaturally smooth area. A real no D will have certain characteristics, like that weakness in the motto, a genuine authenticated 1922. No D cent is a major rarity, worth anywhere from $500 for a worn one to over $50,000 for a high-grade example. It's a classic story of a mint mistake creating a collector's treasure. The year is 1943. America is in the thick of World War II, and, well, every resource is being diverted to the war effort. Copper, in particular, was a critical strategic metal. It was used for shell casings, wiring in planes and ships, and really, all sorts of military equipment. The government needed every ounce it could get, so, to save copper for the war, the US Mint made a dramatic change to the penny. For 1 year only, the penny would not be made of copper. Instead, it was struck on zinc-coated steel planchets. These 1943 steel cents are very common, but honestly, they're weird. They're magnetic, they're silvery gray, and they tended to rust pretty easily. People hated them. They got confused with dimes, and vending machines rejected them. But they served their purpose, saving enough copper to make 1.25 million shells for our military. The plan was that for 1943, all pennies would be steel. But, as with any massive industrial operation, mistakes happen. And this mistake created one of the most famous rare coins in the world. At the end of 1942, when the mints were switching over from copper to steel, a few leftover copper planchets, the blank discs used to make coins, were accidentally left in the hoppers of the coin presses. When the presses started up in early 1943, these few copper blanks got fed into the machines along with the millions of steel blanks. They were struck with the 1943 dies, creating a handful of 1943 pennies on the wrong metal. A 1943 copper penny, a coin that was never supposed to exist. For years, these were the stuff of urban legend. Rumors spread that Henry Ford would give a new car to anyone who found one. That wasn't true, but it sure fueled the fire. The government even denied their existence for a while, but eventually, a few started turning up. It's estimated that only about 40 of these error coins were made across all three mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Maybe 15 to 20 are known to exist today. Each one is a superstar in the coin world. Finding a real 1943 copper penny is like winning the lottery. They are incredibly valuable. A single one can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The one and only known example from the Denver Mint sold for $1.7 million in 2010. But be warned, this is probably the most altered and faked coin in American history. People will take a 1948 penny and try to alter the 8 into a 3, or they'll copper plate a steel 1943 cent. The easiest way to check? A real 1943 copper cent will not stick to a magnet. A steel one will. It's a legendary coin born from the pressures of war. This next one is probably the most visually dramatic error coin you will ever see. It's a coin that you don't need a magnifying glass to identify. The story takes place in 1955 at the Philadelphia Mint. It involves a problem during the creation of the dies. To make a working die, you take a master hub, which has the raised design, and press it into a steel blank multiple times to create the incuse, or sunken, die. This process has to be done perfectly, with the hub and die lined up exactly the same for each impression. Well, one night at the Mint, one of these dies was made incorrectly. After the first impression was made, the die was removed for a heat treating process. When it was put back in the press for a second impression to deepen the design, it was slightly rotated. The hub struck the die a second time, but in a slightly different position. The result was a die that had two complete overlapping images of everything. Every letter in the mottos, the date, and Lincoln's profile was doubled. This severely doubled die was then put into a regular coin press and used to strike pennies. It's estimated that somewhere between 20,000 and 24,000 of these error coins were minted before mint employees noticed the mistake and destroyed the die. The coins were mixed in with a batch of millions of normal pennies and sent off to banks, mostly in the Boston and upstate New York areas. They were out in the wild, waiting to be found. The story broke in the numismatic press later that year, and the hunt was on. Collectors and the general public started frantically searching through their pocket change. The doubling is so strong, especially on the words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," and on the date 1955, that it looks like you're seeing double without having a drink. It became an overnight sensation, and is largely credited with creating the modern boom in collecting error coins. It made people realize that valuable mistakes could be sitting in their pockets. Today, the 1955 double die obverse is one of the most famous and popular error coins ever made. Because so many were found early on by the public, they are available in all grades, from heavily worn to pristine uncirculated. A worn one might cost you about $1,000, but a gem, mint-state example can bring in over $50,000. It's a spectacular error that captured the public's imagination and showed everyone that sometimes, a mistake can be a beautiful and valuable thing. You'd think a mistake as dramatic as the 1955 doubled die would be a once-in-a-lifetime event, but lightning can strike twice. Fast forward to 1969. By this time, the Lincoln cent had a new reverse design, the Lincoln Memorial, which was introduced in 1959. The coin collecting hobby was huge, and everyone was on the lookout for errors. And then, rumors started to surface about a new doubled die, one that was struck at the San Francisco Mint and was even rarer than the famous 1955. The cause was the same as in 1955. A misalignment during the hubbing process created a die with a dramatic doubled image. The doubling on the 1969 S is just as spectacular as its 1955 cousin, with strong doubling on the date and all the lettering on the obverse. However, there was a major twist to this story. When the first examples were submitted to the major grading services for authentication, the U.S. government stepped in. The Secret Service declared them to be counterfeit and began confiscating them. This was a huge shock to the coin world. The government believed it was impossible for such a dramatic error to have been made with their improved quality control procedures. They were convinced the coins were fake. The first 5 that were discovered were seized and destroyed. It took a former president of the American Numismatic Association, a man named Roy Isbell, to prove they were genuine. He provided evidence that they matched the minting characteristics of other 1969 S cents, forcing the government to admit they were real and return the confiscated coins. Because of this early confusion and confiscation, the 1969 S double die had a cloud of suspicion over it for years. It's also believed that the mintage was incredibly low. Unlike the 20,000-plus 1955 double dies, it's estimated that fewer than 100 of the 1969 S examples exist today. They were never released in a large batch. They just trickled out into circulation, making them incredibly difficult to find. For a long time, it was a ghost, a coin that many people had heard of, but few had ever seen. Today, the 1969 S double die is a holy grail for error collectors. It's far rarer than the 1955 and carries an incredible backstory of being seized by the Secret Service. It's a true numismatic prize. You have to be careful, as many fakes exist, but a genuine example is a 5-figure coin, easily. A nice uncirculated one can sell for over $100,000, with one record-breaking example fetching over $500,000. It's a reminder that even when you think you have everything figured out, a spectacular mistake can still happen. And there you have it, the incredible stories behind 10 of America's rarest and most valuable pennies. From a controversial design in 1793 to a Secret Service seizure in 1969, each one of these coins tells a unique story about a moment in American history. It just goes to show you that even the smallest things can have the most fascinating backgrounds and be worth an absolute fortune. I've been around this business a long time, and honestly, the story is what always gets me. I'm curious, which one of these pennies surprised you the most? Was it the wartime copper cent, or the one with the designer's initials? Let me know down in the comments. Now I know what you're thinking. The next time you get a handful of change, you're going to look a little closer, right? And you absolutely should. While the chances of finding a 1943 copper penny are slim to none, there are still plenty of other, more modern errors and varieties out there waiting to be discovered. You literally never know what could be sitting in that coin jar or hiding in your pocket. The next great find could be yours. All you have to do is look. Thanks for sticking with me through this journey into the world of rare coins. I hope you learned something and had some fun. If you enjoyed this deep dive, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got a lot more stories to tell about incredible finds, hidden treasures, and the fascinating world of collecting. You never know what's going to come through that door, or what we'll talk about in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.